the employability traits, qualities, characteristics of just like, all right, what do we need to be training, doing, and at BYU Idaho to get them more ready. And I decided not to make it department specific, just like what are the things. So if they needed certain skills, they get those skills, but then they have a leg up above other people.
Yeah.
All right, just one more click. Okay. Well, all right. So as you think about this, think about people that you've hired, coworkers, employees that like have the it factor. Do you know what I mean by the it factor?
I mean, I think when I think of the it factor, I think of someone who's good at their job and you see potential for future growth.
Yeah, and that you want on your team.
Yeah. Or
work for them, or just something about them, just like what is it? And hopefully I discover some of that. So there's the hiring stage, there's the interview stage, there's the initial stage, and then there's the promotional stage, and I just want to touch on all those.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right, so when you think about the best people at your company that you've hired, how are they first discovered or noticed?
I think there's probably a couple places. One, we focus on a couple different areas, like we'll go to universities and campus events and where we have established relationships where our brand, Honeywell is not a very well-known brand. Mm-hmm. So when we've had the opportunity to build that relationship on campus and professors or administrators are saying, hey, this is a good environment, we rely heavily on that. When you step away from campus and you talk more broadly, I mean, there's so many applicants coming in. It's very difficult. So the best way to get noticed is through a reference, friend of a friend, and that happens a lot. Like I'll have people passing someone along and they get to the top of the heap. It doesn't mean they always get hired, but if someone I know and trust says you should consider this person, they're usually at least going to get screened or interviewed. So it's a really good way to work through identification. It's not ideal. We can talk resume a little bit. I know, so university's one, friend of a friend, some sort of recommendation is one. If I'm looking at pure resumes and trying to make some sort of identification decision, I am looking for a track record of success in a single environment.
Okay, yeah, and that's actually the second question, because as you're sorting through them, like how do you differentiate from two applicants that appear to be same qualified? So
yep,
just track record.
Yeah, I mean it's very easy to get more money by bouncing. It's very easy to get a bigger title by bouncing, but I want to see someone who was promoted internally by people they knew. They took big steps within an organization. Now, sometimes you're in a smaller organization, it's not going to work, and if you can tell the story, that's great. But I want continuity of service, I don't want big gaps. I'm going to push on transitions and try to understand why you separated from an organization. If you're always chasing money, that's a little bit of a red flag. It's not a bad thing, right? I mean, everyone's chasing money to some degree, but I want someone who kind of finishes what they started and someone who is promoted internally. Like that shows me that someone knew you and they chose to put you in a position that elevated you even though they knew everything about you. So those are a couple things I look through for. Credentials, obviously, someone that has moved around and had different experiences, so kind of a broad base is also something that I'm going to look for in an organization.
Oh, interesting. So when it comes to interviewing them, did you do that yourself? Were you part of a team that does that?
Yeah, I do lots of interviews.
Okay.
Lots of different roles, yeah.
Are there any qualities or skills that make someone stand out during the initial hiring process beyond just the resume or their qualifications?
Yeah, I look at an interview as an opportunity to assess a few behaviors. I don't think an interview is the best way to assess technical skills. I mean, everyone can do a little bit of research, especially if it's online. You can get prompted, you can get AI, you can get whatever. So I'm looking for someone, I'm using behavior-based interviews usually, so I'm looking at what have you done in the past and how does that reflect into the future. And specifically when I'm looking at that, I want problem solving. Like I'm looking for unique things that you do above and beyond other things. So
Okay.
how do you handle an ambiguous situation? You know, like if someone gets told what to do, most of the time they'll do it. But when you see a problem that's in front of you, there's no easy solution. I have to use my own brain to figure it out. That's what I want to see. And I want to see people that put in systems and processes that will endure beyond them. So what changed? What fundamentally changed when you were in your last job and you stepped away and it's continuing because you did something different? So analyzed a problem, identified that problem, made a change that is going to make the organization better for years. Right? So that I want fingerprints. I don't want someone who's like, I was there, I did what I needed to do, and when someone told me to do it, I did it every time. Like I'm not really interested in that.
Yeah.
I'm also looking in an interview at communication skills, communication behaviors, eye contact, fully formed thoughts, and ability, especially in the world I'm in right now, an ability to communicate with stakeholders is an important part. And I think communication in general it's not evenly distributed. So you want someone who, even if they can do all the right stuff, if they can't tell that story appropriately, they're not going to get credit for what they're doing. So those are a few of the things. We do assessments here, so I rely on assessments when it comes to behavioral fit, competencies. We'll put people through and talk about intellect. I think it's hard in an interview to assess those types of things. So I'm looking more for cultural fit. I'm looking for your ability to solve problems, your ability to communicate with me and with other stakeholders.
How do you do that in an interview? Like, because that's a lot.
Yeah.
Cultural fit, communication.
Yeah.
Are there multiple interviews? Are there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll take people through 4-ish rounds of interviews before they come into a place like Honeywell. And I'm usually one of the final interviews, so I'll review notes, I'll understand, I'll poke on areas where someone has already done a good job. But most of what I'm going to do in an interview is I'm going to reflect back on your past, and I'm going to ask for specifics. And I'm going to try to get you to tell that story in a clear fashion. I find it to be easier of what would you do, like those are easy to answer, they're hypothetical and ethereal. But if I say, tell me about a time when you were faced with a problem that didn't have an easy answer, and then I try to go as deep as I can. I want to ask follow-ups along those lines, understand specifically what was your contribution versus maybe what you were part of a team with or whatever else. I want someone to tell me their story. I find just the tell me about you question is very insightful usually. And then 3 or 4, I'm usually interviewing for 30 to 45 minutes. It's not quick, or it's not long. So I'll take 3 or 4 behavior-based questions. I want to hear what questions someone has for me. Another very important part for me in an interview is self-selection. Do you really want to be here? Have you, especially with, we're not General Mills, we're not Pepsi. Like, Honeywell is not a brand name that you're going to see out on the street. So I'm going to ask you questions of why? Why do you want to work at Honeywell? And if I get boilerplate material and they don't know what our products are, they haven't looked at publicly available interviews, they haven't done 60 minutes of research in who we are before they walk into an interview with me, that's a concern. It feels too generic for me.
Yeah, it's just like, all right, you made it into our pile, and now I guess we'll go through the interview.
Yeah, I applied to 100 different places, and you called me back, so I want to talk to you. I want someone who's like, Honeywell matters. Honeywell's we have 100,000 employees, Fortune 100 company. Like, if you haven't taken your time to do a little bit of research, I want it to be a little bit customized to who we are.
Interesting. What's the most common reason someone gets hired, even when there's multiple candidates? Is there seem to be anything that pushes them over the edge versus other people?
Yeah. I'm gonna, I'm an HR person, so I try to rate someone clearly. I have 5 or 6 questions that are roughly standardized, and I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna rate you, 1 to 5 in each of those categories. And at the end of the day, I'm usually going to pick the person that scores the best in my evaluation of each independent question. Try to remove bias, try to kind of work through that. If they're equal or they're somewhat equal, I'm going to come down, like I mentioned, do you want it? Like, could you convince me that this is something that really interests you? Like, I want, motivation and passion is a hard thing to, like, instill in someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone sends me a follow-up email, hey, I enjoyed our conversation, here's what I think I bring to the table. If someone answers questions, if someone has looked at my LinkedIn profile and asks me insightful questions about who I am and what I've done, like, those are things that indicate they've put some discretionary effort into this, they really want it, and that's going to reflect very well on me as the interviewer.
Oh, that's interesting. And my first thought was, I should have looked up. Just
Yeah.
little things like that. It's just because there's, and I'm not interviewing for a job, but I am interviewing to really figure out what that factor is.
Yeah.
And those little things probably do make a big difference, especially if you have two people. They seem to be even. If you have one person that asks you about your LinkedIn profile or send you a follow-up email, does give you the edge.
It does.
Huh.
Absolutely does.
Are there any warning signs or gaps that make you hesitate to hire somebody, even
Yeah.
if on paper they look qualified?
Yeah. In an interview, if I'm seeing communication red flags, if someone can't tell a story, there's lots of different ways to tell a story, right? But we usually follow, like, I want you to paint the picture for me. I want you to talk to me about what you accomplished, how you did it, what was the result. Like, I want some sort of narrative. If someone's coming in and they're answering a question and they're leaving out pieces, for me as a third party that doesn't have the background, I'm like, okay, that's a communication gap. That's something that I'm concerned about. I'm going to spend the first around 5 to 10 minutes of the interview walking through your job history. Maybe not as relevant if you're a brand new, new graduate, you're coming out of school. But I'm going to look for gaps, and I'm going to try to understand why those gaps exist. I'm totally fine if someone's like, hey, it didn't go well for me at this company, and they downsized, I had a conflict with a manager. If someone's upfront and honest with me, great.
Yeah.
If I'm looking at those gaps and I feel like you're hiding something, misrepresenting something, even if it's not true, I'm walking away because it makes me nervous, right? So I worry about that. As I mentioned earlier, if you end up with me, lots of times I won't be the selector on the resume.
Yeah.
One of my direct reports or someone in my organization selects on the resume, and I'm getting them as a final candidate. So I'm going to look at the resume through a different lens. I'm going to look for gaps. I'm going to look for someone who spent 1 to 3 years at, it happens. People are going to do that. But if you have 3 different companies where you've spent 3 or fewer years, that's hard for me to accept, because I'm not, my investment, by the time I feel like you're hitting the ground and doing great things, you're looking for something else. You've shown me that's your pattern of behavior.
Devil's in the details in those sense.
It is, and we're going to ask a lot of questions, and we're going to, I try to make it conversational. I want to talk, I want you to talk, and but I'm looking for, lots of those types of things. So in the interview, any signs of integrity or misrepresentation is a big one for me. Inability to communicate well, to tell your story, and then that third one is, if I feel like you're just along for the ride, and I did what they told me to do. Cool. That's not what I'm looking for.
That's interesting. You've mentioned a few times the ability to tell their story.
Yep.
I'm a public speaking guy. I teach public speaking on campus. I run the Presentation Practice Center on campus,
Yeah.
Which is part of the tutoring center. And so that rings really true to me. And it's not that it has to be rehearsed, but there is a communication side of that.
Yeah.
That telling your story, and when you say, can they tell their story, what does that mean to you as the...
Yeah, lots of times I will have someone who is, they share the result.
Okay.
And the result is cool. And, like, well, I was in this group and we improved attrition. We were at 15%, we went to 10%, and I feel really proud of that. Awesome, right? But I want a little bit more of the what and the why. So,
this is how we did it.
Yeah, exactly. So, we talk about it. It's not anything different than what everyone does, but we use kind of the STAR methodology, right?
Okay.
That's how I rehearse for interviews still to this day, right? So situation, task, action, result, right? So I want to understand, like I walked into an environment, attrition was a big concern. We were hiring from XYZ places, 15%, we looked at the industry's at 8%, and as a result, we're hiring an extra 50 people a year. This is, whatever, right? And so I met with my leader said, I want you to do this. Here's some people to talk to. So here's what I did. I went out and I ran these focus groups. I talked to industry people. I came back with whatever. And the result, we ended up achieving it, right? So you need to bring me along for the ride. And all of a sudden I'm like, wow, this person talked to people. They looked externally, right? Like, I don't care what the solution is. Like, anyone can bring attrition down. I want to know how you thought about it. Who you approached, how you engaged people, how you communicated. Like, that's what I want out of it.
That's neat. And you called it the STAR method. What is it again?
Situation, task, action, result.
I love that.
So, end with the result, end with the story, and don't get long-winded. That's another thing, like a red flag for me in an interview. I got 30 or 45 minutes. I want someone who's self-aware. I'm going to walk in, my first question out of my lips every time is, tell me about yourself. Take 2 or 3 minutes and tell me about yourself. If you take 30 minutes telling me about yourself, like, we're not going any further. Right?
Okay. It's interesting that you say that, because I teach my students, in fact, their first speech they have to give me is their me in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And I'll give them 45 seconds to give their me in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But I want it to be a good, and I call it a softball question. Because if you had somebody come in and they wanted to work for your company and you said, tell me about yourself.
Yeah.
And they give you a good solid softball question, this is what I teach them, and then help me know if I'm teaching them the right thing. If they do a good me in 30 seconds, it gives you more ammo to do another softball question to them, right?
Yeah.
And so pretty soon you're just knocking them out of the park one right after the other, and it feels like a conversation rather than, oh, I like long walks on the beach, and it's just the fluff, and then they're like, all right, let's get into the hard questions. It's just the good softball question after one right after the other, because then you want to know the details. Well, tell me more about bringing down the nutrition. Tell me more about raising $500,000 for whatever.
Yeah.
Then
exactly. I describe it like kind of like a coat rack, right? You're constructing the coat rack, and if I do that, I'm going to say like, oh, and then I spent a couple of years in Mexico. I was the country leader there. Lots of cool experiences. We can talk more about that if you want, right? And I'm going through and I'm dropping a couple of these things, right? So I'm constructing this coat rack, and then I let them kind of hang the coats where they want, or let me fill in the details. But I always try to give a time bound, because I can't judge someone. I can't be mad at them if I say, tell me about yourself, and they take 30 minutes. But if I say, take 2 or 3 minutes and tell me about yourself, and then they take 30 minutes, okay, problem. And in general, like, if I ask a question, like, I am giving someone permission to talk. I mean, maybe it's not fair to judge, but the floor is yours for a couple minutes, right? So take time. When you write a resume, you start with the result, right? Like, that is like improved attrition by 20% by doing XYZ, because I want to catch their eye. I want them to see that percent. I want to pull them through. When I'm interviewing, the floor is mine for a couple minutes. So I need to get to the result, but that's the impressive part. So let me tell the story and get to the result. I don't want to be long-winded, but I also don't want to be too short.
Yeah.
Because then I'm not bringing anyone along. I'm not showing the compelling stuff that I'm working on.
So there's a sense of being able to read the room, understand the situation, understand how I'm going to communicate it in an effective way so that I can produce my best self.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
interesting.
Yeah.
So let's jump into the trial stage, because there's I would imagine that there's a trial period that you're like, all right, let's see if he really was a good fit or she was a really good fit.
Mm-hmm.
After somebody was hired, what qualities or behaviors help them become a strong long-term fit for your company?
I like curiosity. I like vulnerability, and I like someone who's going to be a little bit proactive. And so everyone's insecure. You walk into an environment, I've been here 17 years, I know of everything that's going on. If you just try to pretend like you know it and you don't have questions, I know you got questions, and you're gonna short-term your ability. So I want someone who says, I'm bringing a lot of cool stuff to the table, help me. Like, I'm curious. Tell me what that acronym means. Can I come to this meeting and just listen? Like, those types of things where someone's like, instead of, tell me something to do and I'll try to leave you alone, it's hard for me to invite you to shadow all day or to tell you every single task. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to give you a list of people, go out and talk to these people, here's a few things that you can work on, and I want you to come back and be like, hey, so tell me more about this, and really specific agenda items that we can work through. I want you to tell me, like, I don't know what to do with this, or I am not as busy as you think I am. Can you give me, be vulnerable, tell me kind of what you're feeling about. And then, like being proactive and working through messy stuff. I gave you 2 names. I talked to both of those people. They gave me 4 other names. I went and talked to them. Here's kind of what I'm thinking. So I want someone who fairly quickly, knows how to check in with me when they need to, knows how to, be somewhat autonomous, starts building a network of loose connections that they can work on, and is coming back and raising their hand and saying, what else, right? And someone that, candidly, we live in a very social environment, so I want other people coming in and saying, I met with Spencer, he's pretty impressive, right? So get out and get to know people, start helping them on their issues, and that kind of informal feedback is a really good indicator. If someone's like, oh gosh, like Spencer came in and I tried to help him, but I'm not really sure what he's doing, and it doesn't seem like he knows what he's doing, like, part of that's on me, and I appreciate the feedback, but part of that is, okay, like, get out there and, like, do a better job of representing who we are. So, someone who's proactive in problem solving and doing all that stuff.
I love this. Just on a side note, this is kind of what, and I don't know how this is going to turn into lesson plans or stuff.
Yeah.
But this is good stuff. Let's talk about promotion.
Yeah.
What qualities, behaviors, skills, what qualities, behaviors, or skill gaps prevent people from being promoted when they're technically doing their job?
I think there's a lot of people that want to be promoted, and they want to be promoted because they think what they're currently doing is worth more than what they're getting compensated for. So, I mean, to get promoted means you're taking on a new skill set. You're doing something that you haven't done previously. And I think, that lots of people want the economic piece, they want the recognition piece, they want to move up a level, but they don't really want the additional stuff. So a competent individual in this job has very little correlation to being a competent manager or a competent director or whatever else. So, like, anyone that just, like, if you haven't shown me, like, if you're in an organization and you want this job and you haven't talked to the person, you haven't volunteered for a project on their team, you haven't done those types of things, even though you're really good at what you do, you haven't demonstrated an ability to take that step. So I don't know, it's an interesting question because technical competence has very little to do with, there's a few areas like engineer 1 to 2 or whatever, like I have to develop skills, but I'm essentially doing the same thing. When I talk promotions of, individual contributor to people manager or individual contributor to project manager, you're kind of starting fresh in a lot of ways. Like you've proven yourself, you're good at what you're doing here, but you're in the organization, you see that job every day. To get that job, you need to show me that you're doing something to work towards that.
Well, interesting. So not only, it's almost like saying, all right, during the trial period, you excelled and exceeded, we're going to give you another opportunity to kind of do that again.
Yeah, we have a few roles,
Yeah.
and most organizations do, where you're going to progress by your technical competence, right? I hire a benefits analyst 1. They could grow through 4 promotions. They could be a benefits analyst 2 and a 3 and a senior. And they're going to grow through, their ability to understand how to manage the 401k. Like, what do I do? And now I know how to do this. And I don't know, like the technical competence, those are easy promotions. Usually if you've got a heartbeat and whatever, like time and grade is going to get you there, right? Like a couple of years as an analyst 1, you're going to get a step up and whatever. But the harder ones are when you're taking on something that is outside of that swim lane. You're becoming a project manager, people manager, or taking on global, stakeholders, whatever. And the reason people usually disqualify, and we train people, right? It's like, oh, you've gotten these promotions through technical competence, and they're like, I'm ready for the next step. But the reason you don't get that is because you haven't prepared for the step. You don't know what it entails. And I look at that and say, you're a great performer, but you're going to step into that role and you're not going to like it, first of all, because you're going to be asked to do stuff that you've never done, and you're not going to succeed. So, the positive side of that is, what are you doing? Like, talk to the person who has the job you want, let them know you're interested in it. Tell your manager, hey, I want that job at some point. What are some projects that will help me get into that universe? Those are the types of things that will differentiate people to get into those roles.
Yeah, it's almost kind of an attitude of above and beyond.
Yeah.
Than just like, all right, I come and punch in and I check out, but it's like the investment.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a good word for it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I got 2 more questions for you.
Sure.
When you think about the people who are most successful in your organization or industry, what qualities, characteristics, or skills do they consistently demonstrate?
So a few things. One, making the complex simple.
Okay.
So how do you take something that is big and scary and no one knows how to fix it and break it down into measurable pieces that we can work through and organize different, swim lanes. If you're working on this, you're working on this, we're going to pull together and work together. I think balanced short-term and long-term thinking. So people that are successful in my organization don't exclusively focus on, hey, here's the vision and I'm just going to give you the vision and walk away. They don't exclusively focus on, here's the metrics and here's how I'm going to get there, but they do a good job of pivoting between, I'm going to deliver today and I'm going to deliver in 2 or 3 years, and I'm looking at both somewhat simultaneously or equally, or at least I'm spending time on both of them. Thinking, maybe larger in the organization, but an ability to motivate and mobilize a team is a unique skill, and high performers know how to multiply their effect. There are some small individual contributors, but you want someone who can use the unique skills and abilities of a team and help that team achieve something together versus just being focused on their narrow swim lane. I mentioned it, but communicating, helping people down in your organization understand what's happening, helping your leaders understand, being able to sell. It's very easy to say like, oh, this is a no-brainer, like we should do this, but when you're asking for investment, you need an ability to paint a compelling story, sell that story to people that, you know, have a finite amount of resources and you want them to direct it to what you're working on. So, you know, telling that story, communicating in a compelling fashion also differentiates.
Thank you. All right, this last question is more of a self-reflection.
Okay.
If you could give advice to your 17-year-old self who wants to be hired, succeed, promoted, all the things that you do in the workforce, what would you tell yourself to develop first and why?
I would tell them, first of all, be patient and find something that you really want to do. Like getting gainfully employed in a job that you hate for 40 years isn't going to serve anyone, right? Like, you're not going to be happy, they're not going to be happy. So employability is important, absolutely. Like, we don't need like a bunch of Latin experts out there, right? There's no jobs in it, but spend the time, talk to people in your neighborhood, in your church, in your community, find out what they do, job shadow, like spend the time to find something where you're like, I think I could do this well, and it really interests me, and I can make money at it, right? So finding all three of those things is good. If it takes you till your junior year, it's okay, right? Continue working on it, try to do what's right. Don't close any doors academically, so regardless whether you figured out your career or not, do the very best you can in school. Like, for most of what you're gonna do, if you wanna be kind of a senior level professional, postgraduate work is probably something you should be shooting toward. So if that's the case, for me, it took me until after my sophomore year to decide what I wanted to do longer term. At that point, I could have added a little bit to my undergrad, but I was like, I want to go to grad school, and having good grades and doing well on entrance exams kept a lot of doors open for me. So find what you want to do really, really well in that undergraduate education, get to a place where you feel like, I'm knocking it out of the park and I have a lot of opportunities in front of me. 17-year-old self, I would also say, be open, especially early in your career, to move and go to where the opportunity is. It was way easier for me to join Honeywell and be successful in Honeywell in Minneapolis than it was to join in Phoenix. And I've moved around a fair amount in my career. I know it's a sacrifice, but in our faith, there's certain things I won't do. I don't want to travel 80% of my life. I don't want to do certain things like that. But being able to move somewhere and have a built-in support system through my religion has been very helpful. And it's not that painful. And I've moved 5 or 6 times in my career, and being able to do so has opened so many doors professionally. So I'd encourage people to do that. Find something that interests you, be really good at it, get as much education as you can. Shoot for probably that postgraduate work, at least a master's degree or something along those lines. And then, build a network. Find people that you care about, that care about you, keep those connections strong, rely on them when you need to make big career decisions. All of those are very important things that I would do.
This is awesome. I don't know if you've noticed, a lot of things we are talking about, the it factor, that's what the world would be like, but the underlining thing is we're trying to develop the best disciples of Jesus Christ as we can, and what is it? These principles that you're talking about are kind of the same thing, the curiosity, the doing your best work, communicating, so.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy. It's a big journey, right? I think, I walked into BYU, Idaho, and I walked into Rick's College in fall of 1999, coming from a little family farm in Utah, and it really is just kind of step by step, right? You just kind of keep progressing through your journey. I didn't know where I was going necessarily, but you try to do the best you can. You try to rely on the Lord, and you make the best decision with what you have in front of you, and you just trust that the process is going to lead you to the right spot.
I love that. That's our family theme, is trust the process.
Yeah, yeah,
Prayer, scripture, go to church, all that
Mhm.
stuff.
Yeah.
Just trust it.
that's very true.
Well, thank you so much. Last question, I guess, that has nothing to do with this, so I could shut this down, but when did you graduate?